You see things.
What did you see last?
House of the Dragon video.
Mm-hmm.
House of the Dragon Season 3 Episode 7 is here, and it is two things in my opinion. One is it is a really cool metaphor at the heart of this episode that I enjoyed a lot, and the second thing is a curious lack of conflict, considering this is the penultimate episode of the season. I mean, dragons clashed, a man got stabbed, Aemond was poisoned, and yet, if you look a bit deeper, there's an issue with conflict here, I think. You'll see what I mean in a moment. We're going to discuss all of it, but first, check out this cool train. So as is often the case, I like to start with some positives. Helena. I'm very glad to see some of her dreams. I'm very glad to see her confronted with the problem. Alicent was pushing her last time to drink moon tea for very pragmatic reasons, and Helena absolutely refused for very personal reasons that make total sense. And I talked about that a lot last time, but choosing to have the baby still doesn't deal with the question of what happens when they're born. How do you keep them safe? We see a dream of Jaehaera and Jaehaerys, but we all know he was killed by blood and cheese. I really don't think there's an easy answer here at all. Adds to that, you've got Rhaenyra breathing down her neck about your dreams, which I think probably brings the point home for Helena. It's a good reminder of how fierce Rhaenyra could be. But I really feel for her. I really worry where her story is going, because her dreams have a lot of allusions to death here, most notably the Pale Mare. I think it's a strong first scene of Rhaenyra attempting to find common ground with Helena before quickly losing her patience and demanding answers, and I think that says a lot about the trajectory there, which I think is something else I liked, how increasingly just desperate for some reassurance Rhaenyra is that she's doing a good job. Having cut herself on the throne last episode, it makes even more sense for this now, but she previously kept going to Alicent for all sorts of support when she felt lost. Now she's asking Helena for a sign that she's meant to rule. She asks Mysaria if she's worthy. At a time she was angry with Mysaria, she very quickly drops that in order to seek reassurance, among other things. Rhaenyra's made a lot of mistakes this season. A lot. But she's not blind. She knows it's not going well. It's only she doesn't particularly know how to fix that, and it's interesting this episode to see Mysaria actively withholding advice that she thinks might benefit the crown. She is sure it is a mistake to not allow petitioners. I think it is worth questioning what power Mysaria has. Increasingly she's falling into either just opposing Rhaenyra's other most trusted advisor, or else offering weak reassurances, neither of which really achieve anything. So I do like that about Rhaenyra this episode. I'm thinking again of the High Septum that warned her. I'm surprised we haven't seen any more build on that as a point, but I think it plays into her insecurity now about whether she's meant to rule, whether she's destined to. Mysaria I'm less invested in, but Rhaenyra works well as a character here. We're just seeing her going back and forth between every possible opinion and decision every time she discusses something with others. Her decisiveness has been ground further and further down. The question raised this episode is that dragons alter people, but right now I would say Rhaenyra has more simply lost herself, which will open the door for alteration later, probably next episode. I should hope next episode. I also did really like Aegon's final scene. It felt a bit contrived that Sunfire should just happen to appear then, but I still mostly enjoyed it. It was kind of fun, and we all knew it was coming anyway. And it's nice to see some development with Aegon finally, or sort of development. You know, finally he makes a decision. I want to go out as a king. I want to be a Targaryen, even if I die, not a fugitive. And what we realise is that as much as Larys called him a terrible king and a terrible man, none of that had any effect on the guy. The second he sees people cower slightly, he is zipped right back to that exact same behaviour of previous seasons. I've criticised his arc this season for just being endlessly walking in circles without any character development, and I stand by that, but I also do know it is the point. He's gone on a journey where he's forced to live as a commoner and see the ravages of war, and yet, contrary to the trope, none of that has changed him at all. He's still a terrible guy. He hasn't learned anything. I do like that. I just don't think they played up the tension enough for it to feel like a development in itself. We kind of needed to see some hope that he might change, some internal conflict, only for the twist that it falls flat the second he gets his dragon back. And I don't think we've seen that. We haven't seen much of anything from Egon until here. I mean, the big decision last episode was that they were going to go to Braavos after all, and immediately that's not happening anyway. So a lot of his scenes, I think they could have cut some of them down. Some of them were needed, but I don't think you needed them every episode. But it's still a fun moment here, so yeah, there's a lot to criticize about this show, but we might as well still have fun with it. You know, what pleasure would there be in life if we were just being angry all the time when a show disappoints in places? Criticism and joy can still go hand in hand. Also, it's pretty cool to see some dragons, and I liked Alice saying, "Idiot." That's a nice bit of dialogue that makes her feel unique as a character. But there were 2 points I said I was going to make this video, wasn't there? I haven't made either of them yet, so let's start now with the point about conflict.
I brought you something.
51% off World Anvil.
Remember a time when you would not fall asleep without it?
World Anvil! Yep, they are sponsoring this video. World Anvil is an online tool for game masters, for writers, for tabletop RPG players and world builders. An online tool for designing worlds, creating characters, chronicling history, planning and managing campaigns from a plethora of different games. My best friend uses it for our D&D campaign, I use it for planning my novel. Far better and easier than the scraps of random A4 paper stuffed into a drawer that used to constitute my creative process. Not only can I keep everything in one place where I can easily edit anything I want to, but I can create timelines, hyperlinks branching off to specific characters or articles, family trees, a billion other things. You can even link them all to maps, like here's this basic map I made years ago. If I click on the character Tess, it sends me straight to her page where everything is redacted, and that's like the most basic thing you can do with your maps. There's other creators whose world building looks so much nicer than mine. There's a whole community network on World Anvil if that's your thing. There's so many different cool features for everything you may possibly need. In general, there's been lots of great updates recently, making the interface even simpler and smoother than it already was. World Anvil is great. I am genuinely passionate, I hope you can hear that, and if you desire, if you crave, if you call to the heavens for a 51% discount, then use the code TREE, or click the link in the description or the pinned comment, and if you just want to try out the free version, then go for it. There's no time limit, test it out for as long as you want. World Anvil. So as I said, there is technically conflict here. We get a dragon fight, we get Egon staring down an army, Aemond is killing his assassin before being poisoned by his mum, Corlys is losing a finger. However, considering this is the penultimate episode of the season, it feels like things should be building to a real boiling point. And yet most of the possible moments of conflict largely dissipate here. For example, it's made pretty clear to us Alice will again save Aemond's life. The way she says idiot doesn't sound too concerned here, doesn't sound in a hurry, she clearly knows how to remedy this poison. I've said before, I don't like this plotline at all. Alicent going out to kill her child. I used to love Alicent as a character, but I feel like a lot of that has been lost increasingly. And I do sympathise that they have to invent something to do with her this season, because having just one of the main characters simply hang around in a bedchamber for 8 episodes wouldn't work very well. There needs to be something, but I don't think this is it. Either way though, if this is what you're going for, at least make it feel like a conflict here. At least have us on tenterhooks as to what Alicent is going to do now the assassin has died. Is she still going to go through with it? Is she troubled? What is Alice going to do? Is Aemond going to find out? How is he going to react? Aemond will indeed survive, and Alicent appears to slip away easily enough without any worry there either. We have a dragon fight, but none of the dragons die. They all get to limp away. Rhaena, who had killed Rhaenyra's son, and it's been hinted a lot of times this season that Rhaenyra may kill her if she ever finds out, that she's going to flip out, that she's going to lose it with Daemon as well. Daemon has been very afraid of this, but no, Rhaena's okay. She's not scot-free, but she's not been burned to death either. Her sister Baela forgives her. Rhaenyra mostly forgives Daemon within a single scene, then decides to be angry at Mysaria instead, but then forgives her too. These were big tensions that had been built up over several episodes. I don't like to see them just finish like this, you know? As fun as Sunfire's appearance is, it plucks us free from the dilemma they'd set up there. I feel like more tension should be coming to a head with a real clash that has impact on the story, and I don't feel like there's been enough impact here. I think it's probably why the dragon fights, whilst pretty cool, doesn't feel hugely memorable this episode. In fact, a lot of this episode feels a little bit forgettable to me. Again, despite some technically well-written scenes here. I do actually enjoy Eamon's scene with Alicent, even if I don't think this is the direction the story should have gone in. I enjoy his naivety, his anxiety, his vulnerable confession that he tried to kill Aegon, and some genuine guilt and perhaps even grief about that fact, and how jarring this contrasts to Alicent, who is out there attempting to kill her son right now and having willingly sacrificed Aegon in the past. This is kind of the problem when you do have to write in more arcs than needed to exist in book form. Not just that something needs to happen with the characters, but it needs to end with some impact and consequence, you know? What's the point in giving Alicent something to do here if it doesn't actually change anything going ahead anyway? Our one point of real conflict amassing for the next episode is Ulf defecting to the Greens, and weirdly, this is very weird when I talked last video about how well they'd been setting up this with him, weirdly it feels very abrupt, because I was under the impression he was starting to feel a bit aggrieved and that something would happen to push him over the edge, you know, there was going to be a snapping point at some point. Instead, we suddenly find out he's been talking to Ormond for a while? When did this start? How did it start? This feels like quite a big thing to have not hinted sooner. Again, you could have had a great conflict about this if, say, we saw Ormond making attempts via like messengers or something to win Ulf round in the past, early on in this season, but Ulf was resistant at the time and he was loyal to Rhaenyra, but then we saw his grievances slowly building across the season. Ormond kept trying, and maybe he tries in person and hints that the Targaryens just want to use him like a pawn, but Ulf denies this. He's a bit annoyed, but defection? That seems a bit extreme, but then he is feeling more aggrieved. He's in a lot of conflict about what to do. There's a rise in tension over what he will do, but he doesn't want to decide anything, so he goes to the pub to forget all of it for a bit, but then bumps into Daemon, who throws him to the ground, and then, okay, this is what makes him snap. Now he's made up his mind. Daemon throwing him down would feel way more consequential that way, you know, if you'd set up this idea before it happens, rather than after the facts, we learn Daemon throwing him to the ground was a snapping point. We learn he'd already been tempted by Ormond, and this is the point that decides it. So just a general lack of conflict in how that's structured does frustrate me this episode. Most of the episodes this season have been pretty good with problems. This episode feels to me like the weakest of the season so far. But there was one thing I did really love that I haven't mentioned yet, wasn't there? It's kind of about Ormond as a whole. I talked about it in a video before about his sensitivity to smells, but I think there's a fun contrast this episode where he's having a jolly old time making all sorts of cunning political manoeuvres, treating with and then cutting off Corlys's finger, bribing Ulf, he's caused panic within King's Landing, and all these little bits he's been doing all season in order to sow discord within the Blacks. All very clever, Mr. Sophisticated Ormond, or at least thinks himself sophisticated, all very advanced 4D Cyvasse playing here. Though I've still no idea how he captured Corlys so easily. But the point is, despite all of that, he's electing to overlook the less high-level issues, the more basic, brutish, cold hard reality that there's an army marching at his gates. What are they going to do? Just as he's elected to avoid all base smells in place of fancy fragrances. He doesn't want to fight with brute force. He doesn't want to think about that. He wants to do all of the little pernickety things instead. And even his discussion about food this episode. He talks happily about sowing disorder in King's Landing, but then Darragh points out the obvious.
How will that help when the winter wolves are clawing at our gates?
So what does he respond? He decides he's not going to eat the meat now. He's going to ignore it and instead limit his diet to fruit and vegetables.
I am inclined to limit my diet to the vegetable
Ignore the baser substance in place of the more delicate details, I suppose. I've not worded that great, but I think you can see what I mean. I think you can see the link here. This is very strong use of metaphor, both in his sensitivity to smells, both in the food, both in his approach to strategy, to convey character. It's very well done. And it's not that Ormond is just going to be overrun by this army without any defense, you know? Likely this is where Ulf comes in, and we're still waiting to see exactly what's happening with Hugh. So I'm not saying Ormond hasn't thought of a plan, obviously, but Daron and Gwaine are nonetheless drawing our attention to the fact Ormond doesn't like to speak of this army and was previously very angry when Kristen Cole didn't come to support him. So I think there is nonetheless a weakness of his character here that may be his downfall, even if it doesn't happen as exactly as this. It's a fun metaphor. It's a deftness of writing we haven't always got this season, but I appreciate it when we do. Otherwise, this is an episode very much framed around the changing of dragons, I suppose. The Greens have gained Sunfire again, and whatever Ulf's was called, I've forgotten. There's also hints about Dreamfire, and the Blacks have potentially injured 3 of their dragons, or at least 2, 1, I don't know, but Rhaenyra's massive advantage in dragons is quickly sinking here. And I can't believe there's only 1 episode left. Our baby was born the day before episode 1, and he's going to be 7 weeks old when this season is done. I'm probably going to remember this season for the rest of my life just as a result of that. I hope the final episode can deliver, because there's a lot it needs to do, a lot it still needs to tie up, and I don't think they've left themselves too much room here. This episode wasn't the big setup for a finale I was expecting it to be, but for now, comment your thoughts. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe, maybe support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee, but otherwise, hopefully see you next time. And as ever, a special thank you goes to Flying Spider, Luke Gore, Michael Gallagher, Emery, Faithy, DQM, Kinesthetic, Maury, Sebastian, Alicia, Chad Bramwell and Joshua C. Follier. Thank you.